I think
Okay, good morning and welcome to our Monday, May 16th, 2022 strategic planning meeting. It is 9 o'clock and let the record reflect that all three commissioners are here and our executive management team. And we've also been joined by some additional people. So I'm going to have you state your name and title for the record.
Gil Hubbard, Facilities Director.
Bruce Russell, Facilities Design and Construction Manager 2.
Craig Conrad, MMEC Architecture and Interiors.
Marian Evanson, MMEC Architecture and Interiors.
Very good. Thank you very much. And then Mr. Mesha, you can state you're sitting in for on behalf of Mark.
Thank you, Chairman Cooney. Yes, Jim Amacio, prosecutor staff, sitting in for Mr. McLean today.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, we will go ahead and get started. And so Gil, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good morning, Commissioners. About 5 months ago, we started down the road of doing a post-pandemic space analysis usage report that we put together, and we hired the folks over at MMEC. Craig and Marian is who Bruce and I worked closely with on this, and this was really to give us a real snapshot here at all the county and on the campus locations and our offsite facilities, a real look at how the businesses were being run pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and then after the pandemic. But it also gave us a really good look at who is actually occupying the space here on the county campus. That way we can kind of really lay a format for future wherever we, as groups expand and as they grow, we'll have a better idea of what space we have here on the campus is available and how we want to develop it. So from there, I will turn this over to Marian and Craig to review some of the data that they collected.
Okay, so again, I'm Marian, and I don't know if we have the little PowerPoint going or.
Yeah,
I think we do. Okay, so Gil asked us to just tell you all a little bit about us, but we have worked on a whole number of projects that are similar to this. Nothing like the pandemic has offered this, but a lot of building programs, a lot of times where we've sat down with people to try to understand their space needs. And we provided a list as part of this, if you want to move to the next one, of just some of our clients. I know it's really nerdy, but I've always really enjoyed kind of gathering this data and really understanding how big something needs to be as far as space utilization. And we've been able to do that successfully for a number of clients over the years.
Most of these projects where we try to discover how much space clients need. And so we were able to use the same techniques to discover how much space you did not need, which is a really unique position that many organizations find themselves in.
Yeah. In fact, one of these, which was the Spokane Review, we worked with them to figure out how they could back out space as the technology changed and then turn their building over to leased space. So that's been an ongoing project, pretty much done now that we're actually in their press building. So how we started with you all is we had we looked at all the data that you currently had. You had a master plan that was done in 2006 that was mainly focused on parking, it seemed like. And then you had a survey that was taken about how the remote work was working for you all, which was a very colorful document. I don't know if any of you read that through that, but there was some really interesting feedback from some of the folks that work with you. So we actually got quite a few giggles out of that. But it did tell us some things and mainly about where to start with asking questions. So we did come up with a questionnaire that we sent out to a group, started out at 25, ended up at 35. And it was a series of questions that we asked everybody about how they worked before the pandemic, how they worked during the pandemic, and how they're working now. And then we sat down with each of the groups and talked to them and talked through with them about how they're doing it and looked at how much space they were using today, how much, and if it seemed like it was wasted space. And if the, and I think people were pretty open and honest with us about how they were working and how they saw themselves moving into the future. So I don't know if you want to move to the next slide. So that was those were the people we actually sat down and talked with. And that was a pretty good group. And, I guess one thing you should all know is that all of these staff take their positions very seriously. They're all very passionate about what they do, which is always exciting as somebody that is an outsider from the county. And I personally learned a lot about all the county departments. You know things happen out there and you don't understand how they actually happen. And then when you sit down with people that are actually making it happen, for the rest of us that live in this community, everybody should know what everybody does here because they would appreciate county government a lot more, honestly, because there's a lot of stuff that happens here. So, but we did discover as we went through this, and this is strictly data driven, is that a lot of the current departments were still working here full time after the 2-week shutdown. And actually, from what I heard, even during the 2-week shutdown, there were people here working. And the main people that were working here all the time were administrative services, the assessors, the auditors, groups, clerk's office, council defense, anything related to the courts was here working with people. Of course, the sheriff and the treasurer and WSU extension to an extent. There was always somebody there, but they were working back and forth. And so we came up with a, in this document, this big document, you can see how we've described every department. And then we took that data that we specifically asked for. So it was by job description. And I don't know if you want to go to the next slide, it kind of just shows the data chart. And it's in these documents here. And it was a graph, but the breakdown of each department is in here by job description. And so we asked people about kind of what they were doing before, and then what they were doing during the pandemic, who worked on site, who didn't work on site by job description, because it doesn't make a difference, because often it was, and you can almost see by the job description how they could work off site compared to those that did not. And a real telling thing was that a lot of it had to do with the phones about whether or not people could work effectively off site. Now, I had some highlighted items down there in the graph that showed how many people are working off site still today. And that number is 62 out of the 1,369 people that are working full-time off-site. But then there's a whole bunch of people that are doing both, that are doing a part-time in the office, part-time out of the office. But one common thread that they all said was that more people could work off-site if they could somehow get phones directly to them. And that's what IT is working on. And there's a statement in this document that they feel that by the end of the year, that they can have a way to have phones that are working through the laptops that were provided by the county. And that number could go way up for people working at home. But there was such a disconnect between the phone system and public service that's where a lot of people ended up having to come back in to actually do their job effectively. So, which was interesting, because I was telling building and planning that we had a client. When I told this client what we were doing for the county, they said, well, they need to interview me and I can tell them how they're doing. And because they felt that people weren't answering their phones. And this was with building and planning. So it was, it kind of just reinforced that comment about how if the phone systems can improve, which IT has assured that actually can happen, that number of 62 could jump up to 384. So that's a big number. And of those 62, most of those people were in the Public Works building. So, and all that data is in this report as far as how that works. So, and, we did find some more information since we had these people. This wasn't a master plan. We didn't intend it to be a master plan. It was really to find out about the effects of the pandemic. But we were able to gather some more information about departments and how they work and that could be useful to you all down the road. Since we had these people, we might as well ask the questions and get into this report.
Because while you have 62 that are working remotely full-time, there's another 300.
384 that could,
That's out of 3.
that are working.
384 that are working remotely part-time.
Right.
So that's a pretty significant piece of the total county staff that right now is working effectively remotely part-time.
And and we have had this news of the city maybe vacating some of your property, which would really alleviate a lot of what's maybe some of the court's concerns have been. So, and the prosecutor. So I don't know what all that mix does for you if that actually happens, city police. But that's a significant amount of real estate. And that was another thing that was part of this report. Because when we looked at the master plan from 2006, we were confused by it because every document was every floor plan was at a different scale. So we went back through, and even though there was not the time or the budget for us to go through and verify every space plan in every building that you have, we were able to take the drawings and scale them all the same. So that when you're looking at the existing, how much footprint existing departments take up, you get a feel for the size, which was very difficult to see in the master plan because they took a little building and made it look big, and they took a big building and made it look small. So these are all the same scale.
Can I interrupt for just a
Oh,
second?
sure.
The other benefit to these floor plans, the way you guys have color coded this, is you can real quickly see which departments are in multiple places, right? Take like the prosecutors, I think there are 5 different locations.
Yeah.
So these graphics are wonderful for that. They help point out that disparity where it'd be nice, and maybe, it'll be up to us to determine whether those functions all need to be in the same place or not.
Right.
But if they do, then this gives us a better tool to start looking at where they are and where we can potentially move them to.
And it gives us a current overview of how the space that we have is actually being utilized. I know for years to get the groups together and actually find the spaces that they actually have. On my side of it, it was constantly changing. So it was nice that we created this plan to get everybody together and actually find out the spaces that they actually are occupying.
It was pretty eye-opening
Yeah.
about how much space people had and
Yeah.
or how much they didn't have in some cases. But section 4 in this document talks about some ideas that we have out there that maybe you could consider moving forward. The news with the city police department came, of course, after this document, but that has a whole nother wrinkle about what you could do with that space. So it's actually kind of exciting on your end, I think, maybe. So I think that the biggest piece of real estate is the Public Works building. You have space in there to do things with. And so we've made some recommendations about what you might be able to do with that. The first would be to take that first floor and move environmental services down there. Do you want to go through those those kind of options, or is that just something?
I think they're laid out in here, so
Right.
these are just proposals.
Yeah,
Of how we can use the space and I look at it with what we, by doing this, what we've actually found that we roughly have with the family law now, the building complete, then moved over, we have about 6,600 square feet on that first and second floor, and how it's best to utilize that space. But that, I'm sure the forecast within the next year or so, that would really be just knowing that you have that space available and how you would like to develop it.
and you know, and do we want to talk about the fourth floor?
I probably not. I mean, because I know that that's something within the group.
Okay,
And I don't, like I said, I didn't wanna, they're just proposals of
Yes.
how we were gonna do that.
okay,
I just wanted to really, from this report, we have a really current view of where everybody is at. Really a good look at some of the potentials and some of the technology hurdles that we need to complete to go forward, especially on the telecommuting side of it. And then the space that we actually have available. I mean, this is a really good groundwork tool right now. If we keep this current, we don't fall to the Homestead Act with a lot of this open space that we've had available at times, that I've actually went to move people in and it's actually, there's already people there. So I think that if we can keep this current, this would be a really good tool if we step into a full-on master plan. If there was any future development or anything in the horizon for the county campus itself, this would be a very good tool to help with that.
we added a couple of things in the appendix about potential office standards, furniture, cubicle standards. As you move forward, when we talked about these people that do both, but that are at home and sharing an office space here, maybe some of those spaces could be smaller. And that'd be another space savings. Because all of them said that sharing is difficult because they'll have something laid out on their desk and so, but they did agree that maybe it could be a smaller space, wouldn't have to be an office, it could be a cubicle, those types of things. So we've outlined some kind of industry standard office sizes and cubicle sizes. And then some what ifs. One of the things that the courts brought up was that they don't have quick meeting spaces for their, if they want to convene the client outside of the courtroom. And several manufacturers have these little phone booth quiet stations, and that they're amazing how they work. Because you get inside there, you can't hear, people can't hear you, and you can't hear people outside. So it might be something that could be just added to the hallways outside courtrooms in a real easy way that would make things happen. And then there's been so much research by manufacturers on this, what's happened to us in this pandemic, and they've tried to come up with solutions that keep people separated, but still keeps them together. And so there's information in the appendix about some of the research that Steelcase, which is kind of an industry leader, and Hayward has done during this pandemic, that, and there's always more coming. I'm getting things constantly about, you know, the hybrid workspace and the best way to accommodate that in furnishings. And we could work with furniture you have and implement other pieces, or look at something new altogether.
Okay, and then you'll see in back to with this too, some of the functional layouts
Mhm.
for like the collaboration center is really what we based the build of the collaboration center. So we really, but it's still, I think for the county it being new, I think there are a lot of entities that are still trying to figure out how to use the collaboration center. So that would probably be, you're still meeting on that on a regular basis with the group, and I do know that they're kind of advertising it. But I think we probably need to get that out a little bit more, and especially now for the some of the offsite groups, Kathleen's group, now that the 8th Street building. We've moved on from that, some of those groups and how they can effectively use that area and then also give us that feedback on what we need to do to make that more usable.
And I do think that if more people are working offsite, more people will use that
Yes,
collaboration
yes.
center. So it's kind of a chicken or egg thing.
Yep,
So, but if, you know, if the phone thing happens
Yes.
right away, then more of that kind of space would be.
One of the things I was hoping to get out of all this is prior to the pandemic, there was so many times when Gil or I would get a call saying, hey, we just hired 2 new people, we need a place to put them. And our response ended up having to be, well, we have to squeeze them into where you are. Right, and that just became really difficult because we just didn't have enough extra space anywhere. And one of the neat things that came out of the whole pandemic issue was it forced people into that mindset of having to work remote, at least for a period of time. And now with this, we have a better understanding. As Marion mentioned, we could have another potentially almost 400 people who could be working from home if they have that infrastructure available to them, which then frees up space for us. Maybe not all that space because we would have to have the collaboration type thing. But that frees up space for us for at least a few years in the future to where we don't have to start thinking about building new buildings and that type of thing. We can start, you know, instead of spending 10 million or $15 million on a new building, we can start looking at, well, maybe have this group work from home or these individuals work from home and then we can use that space somewhere else. So if nothing else, for me, this report gave us the opportunity to look at that. To have the potential of having almost 500 people work remote is pretty incredible to me.
So, I guess what I heard is that if we could solve the communication problem, there's no reason why the 2 new commissioners couldn't work out of Ritzville. No, that's a joke. That's a joke. So, but it does raise an interesting thing that I don't think we've ever talked about is the commissioners being down in Vicky's office. You know, that keeps us in the same building and relatively close. So that's interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. So that's Scott, the probability of the city of Spokane actually standing up their own criminal justice center. I mean, that from my standpoint, that'd be a terrible outcome for the taxpayers because they're going to pay for duplication of so many services. And they're already short in number of police officers and firefighters. Seems like they should take that money and invest it in personnel and not in building. But have you heard any conversation? I mean, is it something that they're seriously pursuing or is it just posturing?
I haven't heard any formal communication from them outside of what we've all read in the newspaper. I think they are, it doesn't appear to be a high topic for the administration, but again, that's just kind of casual conversations we've been having. So if it happens, it does, as the team mentioned, we have a lot of groups that are in disparate locations that are common services, such as our prosecutors. So there's certainly opportunities for us should that occur, but I don't know how serious it is from the city right now. We haven't had, again, anything formally communicated that said they are doing this, here's the plans, none of that stuff.
Well, from my standpoint, the individual that's leading the effort, as I understand it, is the same individual that ended up, separating municipal court from the district court and heading us down that whole path and stuff. And so this is just a continuing effort of empire building as far as I'm concerned, not really serving the public, but assuming that the city's offices do stay here, does that create, other than the fact that they're taking up space, are there any other operational issues or deficiencies that you found in your study that we ought to be aware of in terms of making it more efficient?
Well, you are pretty crammed in to these spaces. And I don't want to say that I didn't see a lot of waste. There was a little bit in the Public Works building. But, and mainly because people had spread out and because they had room. But most of these areas are pretty tidy. They're pretty well utilized. I mean, you guys don't have a lot of waste here.
So did you have any,
Anywhere. In
did you
fact,
have,
some of them are poorly, I can't believe people have to work in those apartments.
Right. so did you have any conversation with the auditor's office about the idea of moving over to Public Works?
No.
Okay. I mean, because it does
I
materially,
thought you were just, I thought you were kidding when you said that earlier. I didn't know that was a possibility.
well, I mean, you were the ones that mentioned it.
Yeah.
So,
Them over there. The
Nobody's in any,
assessor. I don't remember saying the auditor.
nobody's in anything tighter than the loop solo.
yeah, exactly. I mean,
Those are,
so,
but if you want to have a
Nice.
private conversation, those things are pretty amazing.
well, but it
They're
does,
phone booths.
I mean, philosophically, what we tried to do and consolidated all those public services on the ground floor was to have, one-stop shopping for the public.
Mhm.
And, if in fact you did put them over in the Public Works building, that would kind of fly in the face of everything we've been working to try and do. So maybe that's not a good solution. I don't know, just an interesting thought. I hadn't even thought about it before, but.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know that would be, because you got the recording and all of that works with
Yeah. yeah,
the assessors and the treasurers, which is
Right.
why that whole thing's together. And then you've got Department of Licensing.
well,
That is
because of,
correct.
because of that, I'd never even thought about it. So, and maybe it's not worth giving any more consideration to, because, philosophically, it does accomplish what we wanted it to do in terms of one-stop shopping.
Yeah, I think on the other side, we had talked a little bit about Scott, Gary and Bruce and I about it's really taking a look at the folks that are actually here on the first floor and really what is their level of customer service interface? And are they good candidates to potentially be in an office over in the Public Works building in order to free up enough space if we were to develop new space for commissioners or however we were going to do that? I think through this study, there are a lot of folks that come here to the one-stop shop that work here, but don't really do that type of interface with the public. They're utilizing office space here. So, first was getting Tony's area cleared out for the auditor's office. And then really, we take a look at the assessor and the auditor for the groups that are actually in the office areas. So I think that's probably the next step. But again, through this and the project we finished, we have about 6,600 square feet on the first and the second floor. And then we do have some space available on the fourth floor to develop.
In the Public Works building.
Yeah, in Public Works.
Was this done prior to building and planning's remodel or after?
And actually, so I was gonna say, maybe that comment about the phone calls, I did.
Oh,
take-
no,
yeah.
not about that. I was just wondering, did you get an opportunity to see the remodel?
Oh, yeah.
of building and-
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's fantastic. I mean, I love
It
the
is.
look of it, the layout, the flow.
Yep.
I mean, I'd love for us to kind of take that theme everywhere else that we redo. I mean, I just think that it was very tastefully done and it was done very wisely as far as workflow and work product that comes out. I mean, very customer oriented folks. I mean, I think they did a stellar job.
They have had some acoustic issues down there from what I've been told.
And that comment was in the context of the city also having some difficulties during the pandemic.
Yes.
Processing building permit applications. It's just really difficult to do when everyone's trying to learn a new way of
Not-
communicating.
Not the first time we've heard it. You weren't the first person to bring it up.
That trail's been well.
Don't worry, that wasn't why I was asking. I was just thinking, I think that the remodel in there was very, very well done.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, just as we're looking at different, I mean, in the appendix with the different sort of styles and options, I mean, I think that was well done. I mean, if we were going to sort of pick a theme or a look or a feel, that I would like it, I'd like us to continue that one on that we did through building and planning.
Yeah, that one
If,
was.
if you guys think, I mean,
Well,
if you
it's-
think
and-
it
and
was done
actually-
correct.
Absolutely, and it's reinforced by some of this data in the back.
Okay.
About, because they were able to bring in some shared workspaces, some areas within their group where people that weren't in the office could come in and work and make that happen real easy and meet with customers without having to have a scheduled conference room or, so I think they did a really good job with that.
In order to do that project, it was, I gotta say, working with James and working with the rest of the group over there. They were, because we didn't do that our standard method. And we put that one together really, really fast, but it really had to, the only way it was successful was to actually, that group, they were almost like with me with the contractors. They were actually there, they were on the exterior of it. They worked through every bit of the planning portion of it. So they were a really good team to work with on that project. I gotta say, out of all the ones that I've done so far, they were hands-on. They were literally like helping you build the house. So that was, they were a great group to work with, because we did that one on a little bit lower budget that we originally started out with, but we were able to get them the needs that they wanted to have. So that was I think that was the key. And then the actual strategy of tearing that area apart and working on it with them there, they were right there every step of the way. So that was a really good model. I did like that model. It worked really well.
And it would certainly work for other departments
Yes.
and then not work very well
And-
for other departments.
and
Like it wouldn't work well for the court.
And I think that was one of that's one of the comments in this report is, I think that as we get better at the technology side of it, and we can do that more often, we can actually get into these areas and actually do that type of work.
So the prospect of taking Jim's building down is really a challenge because we have no place to put those folks based upon what you've determined here.
Well, there is sounds like most of the storage is coming out of the basement, according to the clerk's
Tim
office.
Fitzgerald, could be, I did
Yeah,
not know
he's-
that.
It sounds like that's almost empty, according to,
I think
we
they've been
met with them a couple
digitizing
of months
records.
ago. So that's helpful. But there's still a lot of people in there that
Yeah.
you don't have a spot for right now.
Okay.
And the old clay plumbing is failing. The AC went out this last year. So that building's constantly in a state of repairs.
Yeah, well, that's why we keep the attorneys there. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
So I guess I would say just, when we built our house, we had a commercial contractor build our house versus a residential home builder.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a difference
Yeah.
in perspectives in that, I think it sounds like what you did with planning was almost treat them more like a residential
Right.
builder, which allows for that flexibility and that thought process to happen and make, minor changes. You're
Yeah.
not making structural changes, but you're making those interior changes kind of on the fly.
Yeah.
That makes it much better than someone who's trying to pre-plan and think through everything that, is one person's perspective, and it's their perspectives, they try to get that information. So I would say if that was successful, I would
Yeah,
encourage you to be thinking more along those lines as we move forward.
Yeah, the high density storage unit and the majority of that, a lot of it, we did in-house labor. The wall remodels, the ceilings, other than bringing in our fire contractors and our flooring contractors, Again, we couldn't have been successful on that if it wouldn't have been for the group over there. They were really, I think they were really excited to get a new area too, though. So they put that extra effort into it, but it worked out really well. And if we keep that model for future redesigns, and I think once we hit that technology level where we can do that, it'll be a lot easier even.
Sounds like the only big issue is the acoustics between offices.
Yeah, well, we thought about that originally, and it's because I think you had ex-military versus private sector, trying to choose how they want to actually model the house. Because I do know that, originally it was lighting, just put the brightest stuff in there. I want them to be awake and alert. We put it all in and now it's killing me, so we've had some challenges here and there. But I think overall though, the design and layout and how they interface with their clients, I think it's good.
It's nice to have a guinea pig.
Yeah,
Because then you
exactly,
can pick apart what you do again and what you wouldn't do.
exactly.
So if IT is successful in developing a phone system that allows for efficiency of folks that are working from home, how much space do you think we would gain by that effort?
Well, potentially it was, 33% of your space.
Yeah.
I'm getting on.
So I guess
We'd have to look
some
at
of my questions is, do those people really want to be working remotely? And then
Yeah.
how do you have that collaborative time? Because I know I've got a daughter who's a structural engineer over in Seattle at Jacobs, for example, and they're coming back now 1 day a week to make sure that they have that collaborative time. They're not in set offices, so it's kind of that hotel style. But they're going to that because they're seeing having everybody remote doesn't allow for that collaboration. Just like the commissioners aren't all remote, we're back in, we could be all remote, but it doesn't allow for that collaborative.
Yeah, we have a small design office in Spokane. We have a firm of about 20 people, 15 of them are in Spokane. And we're back in the office 2 days a week, but many people are in all 5 days because of just a more, collaborative work style. It's a little easier to execute if everybody's sitting down.
And, some people don't have good internet. And so that's a challenge. So there's still going to be some of those 300 and some people that aren't going to be able to work at home effectively because they don't have.
So that's why I just want to be realistic, that
tools.
it's like, just because 384 can work from home does not mean 384 will want to, because some people don't have the space in their homes.
Yes.
Right.
I
Or they have roommates or they have,
families that are in and out and all of that. So so that's why, it has to be I see it as a win-win for both to make it work right. And I work remotely when I worked for the state auditor's office years ago, when I was on their technical services team. I was out of my home, 3 days a week. And then I'd be over in Olympia usually 1 day a week. But it's, it's just different models. And then in some ways, I actually will say I became resentful that I hated to be up in my office at home, because it's like, that was my workspace. And so I really tried to avoid it. So, doing bills and all the other personal things you have to do in your workspace, you don't want to do, because it's like, I spent my whole day there, I don't want to go back in there. So I just see, different perspective on some of that I just want to be, cognizant of that for our employees.
Well, for some employees, coming to work is a break from the stress of being at home. So, just. I'm gonna say something.
I was gonna say, so the number, the 380 or whatever it was, I don't remember if either of you remember, I thought the highest number we ever had of folks telecommuting during the pandemic was around 700, correct?
I think
Yeah,
that was
6
right
or-
when we
yeah,
closed.
600 or 700.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where we topped out. And I never did see a list to see
Right.
what offices.
That's
those were
this
with.
one right here.
Is that
You
on
had-
there?
Yeah, it's on here. So during the pandemic, you had 159 that were full-time remote and 448 that were both. And then 762 that stayed on site. And the breakdown is inside. You know, most of that, a lot of that's the courts and the sheriff's office, honestly, because there's a lot of personnel in those.
About 600. So a couple of observations from me. If there was one benefit of the pandemic, it forced us to step into supporting a remote work environment. So our technology, put the phones aside, our technology enabled us to do that with laptops, with collaboration or virtual meeting spaces, whether it's Teams or Zoom or whatever. So we tested it. We were forced to do it. It wasn't one of those where maybe we want to telecommute, maybe we don't want to. You will telecommute. So we were able to invest in that to support it, and it's worked pretty well. As you've seen through the assessment here, a lot of folks have come back into the office, but again, we had a benefit of investing in the technology. What some of the things that I think were really beneficial from this study is it gave us a current inventory of all of our space, all of our floor plans, which I don't think we had in a really consistent format in the past. So we know what we've got, we know who's where throughout all of the campus and even off campus as well. We do have some of our teams who are working virtually or a hybrid of both today. And the opportunity for us to evaluate what a shared workspace looks like is really important. We've been having those conversations with the teams to be ready to step into some of that. So while we only have 6,600 square feet or so available in the Public Works building, we have more available if we optimize that space. Some of the other things that I identified is we don't have any sort of consistency in terms of how we lay out space. So offices, cubicles, everything's different across the campus. While we may not step into a standardized process, at least we have something to evaluate how we might think about new space, such as what we did in building and planning. We also were able to identify all those teams that are disparately located. And when we're looking at stepping into utilizing some of our available space, how do we bring some of those teams together, which I think is really beneficial for us. The collaboration space that we've designed right now, and it's available to be scheduled on online through our internet site and through some of our Outlook abilities. So that's been promoted a lot, and it's getting some utilization, but it does allow for if people are more often working from home than not, it's a place for them to meet as a team to come in. And that's a model that we can look to replicate elsewhere throughout the county. The customer service interfaces, if we had, greenfield, start from scratch, would we do things differently today than what we have it right now? Probably. But we have a lot of investments that we've made. We made investments in the treasurer, auditor, assessor being together through those common customer touches with it, which I think is very beneficial to the public. We have investments like this for the commissioners conference room that you don't want to just throw away and replace somewhere else. So there's a lot of investments that we've made that we probably want to maintain, but it does allow some of our spaces to look at how are we continuing to interact with the public and how do we make it more effective for them. Public Works building, we've got building and planning on the first floor. Well, the same public that comes in and interacts with them also interacts with our Public Works department, whether it's sewer permits, whether it's stuff around their developments for their roads and transportation stuff. So Chad and I have been talking about how do we look at bringing some of those together on the first floor. I've had some conversations with both our auditor's office and our assessor's office, and they're very open to looking as to places that still interact with the public but aren't necessarily connected to other like functions. Would they be willing and able to move? And I think they're both open to that sort of concept. So I think we do have some sort of greenfield space to be able to work with over in the Public Works building to reevaluate kind of who we want to put there and how do we then start sequencing those. So if we move one group, what do we do with the space that's available from them? So we need to be thinking about how those dominoes work. And the other thing I think we have an opportunity to evaluate is kind of how our security is set up today. Security in the courthouse and the public safety building and over in the Broadway Center are there for courtroom specific activities. And do we need the entire public coming through who's just gonna be on the first floor here? Or just gonna be going over to the sheriff's department? Do we need that security center to be where it's at today? Can we locate it somewhere else so it makes it easier for the public to interact with us? We're just here for auditor, assessor, treasurer's office, working with the sheriff's department. So it was done how it was done when it is, but the Broadway Center building, everyone has to go through security, yet it's only for the courtroom or two that's in there. Does that make a lot of sense? And plus there's costs associated with that as well. So as we think about the space planning and the courtrooms that are over in Broadway Center, is there other places to put those so that we don't have to have additional security protocols over there? So I think there's a lot of opportunity that came from this. And, you know, it wasn't here's how everything is going to look in the future. That's not what this space plan was commissioned for. Is really to give us that current inventory and to look at how our teams are now working coming out of the pandemic and what they've kind of adapted to and where we think some hybrid or full remote work from home allows for us.
And, you know, I did observe, I was told by the treasurer and auditor about when their busiest times were. So I came over here and sat for a couple hours, just sat in the lobby and just watched people come in and out. And just to see what they were doing, what visitors were doing as they came in. And I'm thinking that maybe people are embracing some of your online stuff because there wasn't as many as they had said that there would be. Of just far as public coming in during the busy time. So, you know, that or maybe the public's still afraid to go out very much, but maybe that's picked up in the last couple months.
Yeah,
Or maybe
that
you've all
was
observed more in the last, it was 2 or 3 months, but yeah. Anyway, so I thought that was really interesting, but I have to say, some of the things that your staff have to deal with are they're unbelievably professional because the people that come in with very complicated issues and people really kept their cool. I was super impressed by your staff out there, in both the treasurers and the auditor assessors, because they were just like, wow, I'm not sure I could handle that conversation. So it was interesting. It was an interesting way to spend a couple of hours watching just how public interacts with your staff.
So I think some of the questions are, where do we go from here? We've got some near-term needs with the 2 new commissioners' offices that we're starting to look at right now. Where does that get located at? How do we start to plan for it? What are some public interfacing opportunities that we have on the first floor of the Public Works building to make that more seamless to our community? How do we start stepping into these groups that are working kind of a hybrid and start to maximize some of our space or free up some space with some shared hoteling opportunities? Gil is working through kind of a process for how do we evaluate space requests that are coming in so that we understand what the needs are. We can start to identify what the more urgent needs are near term versus which ones we need to plan for more long term. How do we start to get our arms around the financial impact for that to inform our budgeting process, our capital process? So those are kind of some of the next steps that we see coming out from this, and really understanding kind of where those emerging needs are at.
Questions or comments?
No, just throw it out for your consideration. It in a kind of a off comment you made, Scott. I wonder what would happen, how it would change what we do if, for instance, in the Public Works building, we changed our philosophy to where everything was geared around customer service, so that, just like we did here, where it's one-stop shopping. We do one-stop shopping over at Public Works. So you did have sewer and water and, the building and planning and everything right at at least a representative from each one of those departments right there on the main floor. So if somebody come in, they're working on a development, they got access to all of them instead of humping through the building, trying to find out, well, now I got to go through this guy, this guy, and this guy. And just maybe this is an opportunity to improve the customer service in the Public Works building.
Completely agree with you.
Yeah.
We need to be looking at it from what makes most sense for the customer. How do we make that customer experience positive? Not what works best for us. We need to really look at it, not change the model, but start to build upon the model that we've created on the first floor and expand it. So it is, you don't have to go to the second floor or the fourth floor. It's right here. And we're even looking at having that little kiosk area in the front permanently staffed. So when someone comes in, they know where to go. Hey, I'm here to get a serve. We'll go right over there. They're right around the corner. They'll get you handled. We need to get some of our plans reviewed for a residential home right in here. So it's guiding them through, and it's making it easier versus having to say, where do I go? Because I come across a lot of people. Where do I go from this? Where do I go for that?
Well, I mean, we could actually extend that to include, maybe the health district and getting septic permits. Why should you have to get a building permit here and hop all the way down the public or the health district to get a sewer permit and then hop all the way back here? Maybe there's an opportunity to partner. I think they're the only other agency outside other than the fire districts. We're never going to change the fire districts. They do everything within their districts, but maybe there's something with the health district that would improve the service there too. I don't know. It's an interesting opportunity though.
What do you got?
You have presented to us. What's that?
Too.
Yeah, you got well and septic for the health district. If they had them over here, just saves you the trouble of going through two buildings that are, block and a half away.
Yep.
I don't know, just a
No, it's a really good idea.
opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, there could be an opportunity for maybe taking a look at some of the space that they are now inheriting with the 8th Street building.
Mhm.
They'll be evacuating about 28,000 square feet down there. It's quite a bit.
We do have benefits. I mean, I talked about, we don't have complete greenfield to start fresh, but we do in the Public Works building. We do have some of that spots. So with the family law leaving and coming over here, it does create opportunities for us. And we want to be very thoughtful around how do we set that up to make sure that we're reflecting what the community's needs are.
Yeah.
I think that, so can I, what was your recommendation then for the 2 new commissioners? I'm just thinking, that's the one that is sort of the most pressing issue. These loop cubes, might have to do the job. We'll see. But
Well, they're portable and they could travel to Ritzville.
We met with Commissioner French and Commissioner Cuny, and then we've discussed this with Bruce and Gil about what some of the concerns were about your space. Al, you mentioned this room, and then you mentioned security. And I think there's a really good opportunity in the Public Works building, the entire 4th floor, because you could do some specific security improvements to that floor, and reconfigure it to be an administrative floor. So that's in this document and under options. But there's other options too. So that was one of the ones that it just seemed obvious to Craig and I anyway, that, wow, there's a big chunk of space that you could manipulate and have some really nice office space and conference space and get you all in one location. And then you could leave this here because you guys are in need of conference rooms. And so the investment that was made into this room could just stay where it's at.
I think if there was a recommendation, it would be to consider how you want to serve the public 10 to 15 years from now. What do you want the commissioners' access to be out in the future? And I don't know that that's a decision you have to make right now, because things will change with 5 commissioners. And you have a lot of options on the campus. Some might be in this building. But I think looking ahead, what do you guys think with the next 2 commissioners? would you like that perception of the county commissioners to be 10 to 15 years?
See, I think for the immediate need though, things that we're almost in June. And for us to do anything at this time, I think right now, for the two new commissioners, if there is a way, like Scott had said with the assessors group, to bring them all together with the assessors that are on the other side of the wall where the family law left. If we had an opportunity to utilize at least that space now, so the 5 commissioners could get together and actually have that conversation of how does it work best for the 5. So that way, when we're planning or developing, it gives us enough time right now to really look at that, because we right now out in the construction world, we're hitting a lot of roadblocks, and as far as timelines, and I just think right now a 6 month, to put something together real fast would be really, really difficult.
So, sorry. So at one time we talked about, trying to preserve all the money that we've invested into this facility here, and I still think that that's the right idea and stuff, but just thinking about it, I'd be more than happy to go over to the Public Works building too, as opposed to just staying here, especially, because the majority of what I do is really over there, it's not over here and stuff. And so, if that would make it easier, Mary could take my office and you guys could be here, and then I'd be over there with the 2 newbies. I'd be okay with that, I think.
Yeah, well, and I've stated the same thing, but I'm happy to move. My office is not the ideal office, so.
We've all had our turn in
We've
that.
all spent our time in.
Come on.
Well, I was gonna say
Exactly.
our time in hell, but
And you've all left it, so I'm willing to leave. But no, so, I mean, and I've taken a walk over there and seen, I don't really like the first floor setup, I will just say. It made me a little more nervous because people are right next to your windows. I think as
Yeah.
commissioners for security purposes, that, the second floor space was, I thought would be a better place, but I mean, getting everybody up to the 4th floor and actually having them next to the floor, I think it's a great idea.
Mhm.
I think given what we're dealing with timelines right now too, when you look at the space that is currently for the BOCC offices, how would it be repurposed? There's all kinds of ways you could repurpose it, but it's probably going to be expensive. It's kind of uniquely laid out for commissioner offices.
Yeah.
I think from a kind of a stewardship standpoint for our community, it probably makes sense to build the 2 additional offices with the support staff over in the Public Works building, probably on the 2nd floor, as Commissioner Cuny highlighted.
2 additional offices, so 3 offices over there.
Could be, or it could be just 2, because you have 3 here.
No,
I
I
think we should
think Mary, like all 3 of us have been in the closet,
Mhm.
and I don't think it functions well for a county commissioner
Okay.
office, because you need to have room for having a meeting inside your office where you can have a conference table and all that kind of stuff without having people crawling all over each other. So, I mean, maybe that goes to some other staff person. That's not to demean the staff person. It's just to say that a commissioner needs a bigger space to be able to do what they're doing. But I mean, quite frankly, other than the meetings that we do on Monday and Tuesday, we don't spend a lot of time together, other than, maybe at the coffee shop or the, coffee pot or something. But I mean, we're all doing our own thing. And so I don't know that it's critical that we do our own thing in the same spot. I'm just talking out loud. So I mean, feel free to.
When I think retaining this space here and utilizing, because you do use this space quite a bit.
Yeah.
But by having a couple, 3 offices over in the Public Works building, you're still right there with in proximity to the hearing room and over here. So the commissioners who stay here will still go over there to the hearing room. The commissioners over there would come over here for the conference room. So it's still within stone's throw and probably doesn't have any inefficiencies, because as you mentioned, now most of your work is kind of done with the public and community groups and stuff, and not necessarily together.
But also keeping in mind, when we go to 5, 2 of us can do work together. we can hold meeting because there's not the OPMA issue anymore once we go to 5. So I mean, that could definitely change the dynamic where,
That could change, yeah.
you know, where we are interacting and holding meetings with each other and, you know, 2 of us at a time. Okay, so
No,
I
you
mean,
raise a good point.
the dynamic is different once
Yeah.
we get there. So.
So I think with, as Mary had mentioned, that second floor, I think is more ideal for the commissioner offices as opposed to the first floor. Again, I think selfishly, that allows us to then kind of repurpose that first floor to be more interactive with what building and planning is doing, kind of have that customer service area. So with your kind of head nods, we'll move forward with starting to do some layouts. I know Bruce and Gil had already done some kind of draft layouts some time ago. We could dust those things off and start to look at that second floor and how do we think about 3 commissioner offices with the staff up there and you know, the amenities that you have right here as well.
I think it
That
makes
way it gives
sense.
us, to Bruce's or to Gil's point, we can start moving forward on that. So we're
Yeah.
ready to go by the end of the year.
You know, and I think having 3 there, it still gives us the flex. I mean, we still will have 3 offices here with 3 assistant offices out front. If one of the commissioner, maybe only 2 do want to be over there. One's like, nah, I'd rather be over, you know, I'll take the small office. Yeah, I'll understand that it is a good thing to be in.
You have to open up the window to
You know.
change your mind. Yeah, it's fine.
But no, I mean, it just gives the flex, you know, it gives the flexibility of, you know, 3 in one location or 3 in the other. So I don't know, gives us options.
We'll do that.
I agree with Mary, though. I don't think it should be on the main floor.
No, it's interesting, actually going over and touring and walking around and feeling, like here you feel like you've got a little bit of distance from the walkways to your windows. But over there, you're
Right there.
yeah, and it was just like, you know, having some of the safety concerns we've had and all of that, and it's not as secure, you know. I don't know, it
Yep.
just seemed a little more, it'd be better to be up, you know, on the second floor.
And I think the one other thing I'll highlight too is other than the public accessible areas, everything else is key carded to get into the building, or not to the building, but into the different floors up there. So we do have that level of security right now. You're not going through a metal detector per se, but you have to have a badge to be able to get into the offices. So I think, again, bringing all the customer facing to the first floor allows that free moving of the public with the departments who they interface with a lot, and then the other floors can remain key card access. So it's not just anyone can pop in. You have to have a purpose to be there and someone to, you have a meeting scheduled, so someone's coming out and getting you to come into a meeting, which I think is helpful for our employees as well, as they think about kind of, you know, we never know what may happen. We've seen, as Mary mentioned, we've seen some of the incidences that have been, you know, occurring on our campus. So thinking about our security for our employees is pretty important.
I mean, you're the chair of the health district. What do you think about the idea of bringing sewer and water over to the building department?
I definitely think it's worth a conversation to see what we can do.
Make it a lot easier for the customer. I know that even when I was getting permits for clients, humping back and forth between the 2 buildings and no one was talking and just anyway.
That was the original concept for that building when it was designed, was to try to get all of the permitting entities in one place, because if you think about time before that, it was spread out to about 5 buildings that people had to circulate between to get a building.
Well, thank you very much for all the work that you've put in, and
Thanks for letting us do it. It was really interesting. It was interesting to work on.
I think it's definitely going to help inform us as we move forward, and very productive.
And there is a description of what all the departments actually do.
Awesome.
Because what was interesting is that as we talked to other groups, they didn't know what other groups did.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
You're trying to keep it a secret.
Well, commissioners will also plan on posting this on our internet site as well. So the rest of the organization who spent a lot of time through the interview process with our team here can see kind of the fruits of their work and how it's reflected into it. So we'll plan on publishing that. Available.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Okay, so we've got Doug Chase and Paul Knowles next on our agenda. There we go. Hello, gentlemen.
Good morning.
So it sounds like we're talking about conservation futures, the Beacon Hill property. So I'm going to let you go,
Okay,
whichever
Yeah.
one wants to start.
sounds good. Mr. Knowles, take it away.
Okay, awesome. Good morning, board. Thanks, Ron, for getting the PowerPoint up. So this item is a termination of easement on the Combs property. Let's go to the next slide. So in summary, basically in exchange for terminating an easement held by Spokane County for a well, water pipe, and associated electrical, Spokane County would receive a no-cost extension of City of Spokane water and sewer and associated stubs to the Combs property. Next slide. So just to reorient yourself, we're back in Beacon Hill again, kind of right in the center of the map there. Next slide. And specifically the Combs property, which is just west of Shields Park along Upriver Drive. Let's go to the next one. So back in September of last year, we completed the purchase of the Beacon Hill Combs property, 20 acres in size, as part of the Make Beacon Hill Public Project. There was a house on that property which was demolished by the seller prior to county ownership. It was in very poor shape, had a lot of mold issues and all sorts of things, all sorts of nasties. That house was served by a well and water pipe located on adjacent private property permitted by easement. The existing water right associated with that well is now void due to non-use for 5 years or more. Let's go to the next slide. So we're back at the same graphic. So following our purchase of the Combs property, Upriver 3 LLC acquired the adjacent property to the east that the well and water line are located on. Currently, they're in the process of platting the property as Spokane West and have requested a termination of that easement that we hold that would allow them to decommission the well and be able to move on with their development. Spokane County would receive, again, at no cost, extension of City of Spokane water and sewer and associated stubs to the Combs property. And our anticipated future use of the Combs property does include a trailhead parking lot, which would certainly benefit from City of Spokane water and potentially sewer in the future, though right now our level of service at our trailheads are porta potties. Let's go to the next slide. So the estimated value of the offer before us is around $70,000, and there are no costs associated with this proposed action to Spokane County. So if the board is supportive, we would look to have this on your consent agenda next week for approval. Any questions?
No, I think it makes sense. So thank you. There's any questions or comments? So gee, you guys did a great job.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. We'll
Thank you.
have this on your consent agenda next week.
Okay, thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you.
Okay, so next on our agenda is General Horse, Erin Schmidt. Erin, you're going to be giving the update today.
I believe so. Jeff is available via Zoom, but I will be the in-person designee. Really a quick update this week. We are in the final touches of the Spokane County branding for the CLA portal, you know, the image of Spokane County, our unique text and applications. And so that should be completely ready to go. We'll be sending the commissioners and executive team the link midweek, and then we will be ready for the next round of RFPs to be released the following week. we have found that we have been able to kind of move everything into the CLA portal, which was what we had intended. And now that we're on the onboarding, so we will be able to do the solicitation inside the portal, the review process, all of the different things that are required by the federal treasury, as well as what we need to abide by on our policy. So I think that's really going to streamline things. We learned a lot from the first 3 that we did outside, and it was a lot of work, and doing it all within a portal will be really helpful, I think, both for staff and community. So it's up, but the image is just still kind of, we're trying to tweak the look and feel. So we're really excited to be able to have as our deadline to do the next round of RFPs no later than the 25th. So those are currently set as the 2 water remaining allocations from March. The smaller of the public health for about 300,000. And then we have yet to decide kind of whether broadband will be that week or the week after. So we'll have all of those queued up and ready to go. So, Jeff, did you have anything else?
No, that sounds good. Sorry, Ashley quarantined me because one of the kids has COVID. So I'm out. I'll be working from home for a few days, even though I feel perfectly fine and I'm not sick myself. Just have a sick kiddo in the house.
Seen them in the car.
Yeah. Well, I did come into work this morning and then Ashley said I shouldn't be there. So I left.
Jeff will be in his car until Thursday.
Pretty much.
When the wife kicks you out of the house, she doesn't give you many options, does she?
I know. It kind of is rough.
The only other thing is Commissioner CUNY is going to be briefing the CURB board for our grant this week, and I'll be attending with her and Joe. So we're really excited about that. Basically seed money that will really put Spokane County in a good position for some upcoming notice of funding from the state broadband office. And then we just have ongoing conversations with lots of other folks in the community, understanding those better, and really understanding a lot of other funding opportunities above and beyond ARP that are well suited for some of those asks. So anyway, any other questions for ARP? Thank you.
So we're behind, and now we're going to get caught up. So next, Gary Petrovich.
Thank you, commissioners. I just wanted to give you a quick briefing on something that will appear on your consent agenda for next week, and that's the selection of a financial advisor and underwriter for bond issues. We have engaged in the past services of Northwest Municipal Advisors in the form of Scott Bauer, who I would recommend as our financial advisor for future bonds, and also for underwriter Barclays, and that would be Sean Keats. Now, a nuance on this is that with the airport bonding coming up, and I think that they're anticipating a first quarter 23 bond, they would like to use as a financial advisor a gentleman from Cincinnati that works with PFM. And I have a meeting set up Wednesday with Roy at from the airport to talk about the propriety of them using PFM versus us using PFM, because it only makes sense that we would engage the services of PFM so we wouldn't duplicate costs in terms of the bonding for the airport. So I will have that discussion with them Wednesday. So your selection next week of financial advisor would be for bonds other than the airport bond, assuming we can engage the services of PFM. Any questions or discussions?
So yeah, so I'll just say I met with Scott when I was over in Tacoma. He came down from Northwest Mutual Advisors, and so he and I had a good discussion, all of that. He sent me some information late Friday. I have not had a chance to look at it yet, so I will be taking a look at that to, you know, to just make sure I feel comfortable and clear on where we're at.
And this, if I could, Commissioner, this will get us set up so that the next near-term bond issuance is for the small arms range. So you all approved the bond council last week. And so having the financial advisor and the underwriter selected, we can start moving forward and getting a kickoff meeting and advancing that effort on that bond issuance too.
What's the timeline on us taking a vote, making this decision, Gary?
It would be on next week's consent agenda on the 24th.
Next, gotcha. Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Any other? Okay, thanks, Gary. Okay, well, that's gonna take, is Aaron is on. So maybe I'll have, just so we can try to get closer. Aaron, do you want to do your miscellaneous? Sure. Just in case anyone's waiting until 10:30 to listen to Aaron's big announcement.
Absolutely. Mine's not quite as big. No, just an ongoing update for the funding we received from Washington State Commerce for a tier 1 grant to assist in stabilizing the Ukrainian refugees coming for resettlement. We are in the final stages of a contract for a subrecipient. We are just getting the final pieces for their W-9 insurance and then a few confirmation pieces from Commerce. That will be on your consent agenda next week, Tuesday, the 24th. We don't foresee that being a problem, even though of the short turnaround, because the majority of that funding will be able to go to back to February 24th as a reimbursement of funds done to date. So we felt we had the time from an internal staff perspective as well of this. So that's all of on that. We have not heard back yet on the tier 2 grant proposal that we did for the next year, which would begin in July 1st. That one will be a little bit more of a formal turnaround, but this one, like I said, is scheduled to have all of the required paperwork and on your consent agenda for next Tuesday.
Thank you. Okay, so then we're gonna go to Aaron. We're a little early, but hopefully people are watching, paying attention.
Well, good morning, commissioners. Happy Monday. I'm here with our third and final concert announcement. Ron, could you please cue our fabulous slide? Thank you for the drum roll. We have Elle King Wednesday, September 14th. Known a couple big hits, X's and O's, America's Sweetheart. Some great collaborations with Miranda Lambert. They were on the Billboard Music Awards last night. Elle King has a new song out with Dierks Bentley, so she does a lot of country crossover. And we're happy to have her tickets go on sale this Wednesday at 10 a.m.
And most importantly, her dad is Rob Schneider.
Totally. We hope he comes. That would be a bonus, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, if you are a fan of Adam Sandler movies, you will always see Rob usually in those as well. So
I'm sorry, what did you say?
if you're a fan of Adam Sandler movies, often you'll see her dad Rob Schneider in those movies as well.
There you go. Funny.
He's funny. You like it.
So
I think that's.
I'll go to that one.
You'll go to that one, okay. That's exciting. I think so. This is kind of our top 3 acts then. This is the third of our 3.
correct.
So I
So
think you've got a pretty great lineup for our community.
well, thank you. We appreciate it. You know, there's a lot of great concert opportunities in Spokane during the summer into the fall. So we're thrilled with the lineup we were able to put together.
Well, thank you, and look forward to seeing this kind of come across the news.
You will. Well, thank you again for letting me join you each week. I know it'll be sad not to have me on here next Monday, but you'll get through, I'm sure. So
please.
I'm sure we can work you in if you really want to come back next week, Aaron. I know the chair. I'll put in a good word for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, well, fabulous. Any questions?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, any chance of being able to tie down Perry Como or any of those? No.
Is that like a relic kind of thing? Like, do we bring in?
Oh, just kidding. Kind
Just
of.
had Paul.
Awesome. All right. Well, no Perry Como. Sorry.
Thank you so much for all
Yeah,
you're
they
doing.
took-
And I think that's a great lineup for our fair.
We appreciate it. We're having fun. We're getting really excited to have a really good fair this year.
Okay, and
That's awesome.
again, what's the slogan for the fair this year?
All systems go.
There we go.
The rocket ship.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, last year one of our engines wasn't firing quite as well. This year we are going for it. So we're good.
I love it. Okay, well, thank you, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you all. Have a great week.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
So, are we going to do executive session for Ashley Cameron? Yes. Okay, and then I've got an executive session for you too,
Okay, and
pending potential litigation.
I will let you come up.
I think probably 10 minutes.
Okay. I will do that. Do the 10 minutes. You want to do that second after?
Yeah, we
Ashley's?
can do it after.
Okay.
That one, just like this.
Okay.
Commissioners, so we reviewed last week with you some proposed changes to the Spokane County Code that deals with commissioner meetings, taking public testimony, oral, written. Jim's been working together with Mark on incorporating those into the SCC changes along with the resolution. So I've handed out each of you a draft for your consideration. It includes some of the comments that you would come back with. Commissioner French had mentioned the ability to move items off of consent onto public hearing. That's in there as well. So if you're good with how this is laid out, we could put this on your consent as early as next week. One of the things that we do want to be thoughtful of is some of the new OPMA legislation goes into effect on June 9th. So we want to have it at least adopted by that time. But I want to make sure that you all have a chance to review and make sure that we hit the relevant feedback that we've provided.
We also talked with Jean on it because of course she's responsible for all the agendas. And all the agendas have to be posted on our website. And so I think Scott and Mark and I and Gina worked at this. We think it's really easy to read, Scott. And what we intend to do is repeal what we presently have in the Spokane County Code and then put this in its place. I sent you copies of all this, board members, by email on the internet, so you can look at it if you want to look at it that way. And again, either Mark or I are more than happy to respond to any questions or concerns or make any changes that you think is appropriate.
Thank you. Any other miscellaneous items to come before the board? Seeing none, then Ashley, I'm gonna let you state the purpose and who you're gonna have an executive session and how long.
So the purpose of the meeting is a ULP matter, RCW 42.30.144. I will need 15 minutes. Those present will be the county commissioners, executive leadership staff, Jim Amacio, Josh Grote, and Dale Anderson. And I will not need final action at the end of the executive session.
Okay, very good. So we have that for 15 minutes, Commissioner French.
Pending potential litigation and be the commissioners, senior management team, and there will not be a decision required as a result of it.
And
Mr. Amacio.
Okay, very good. So we will go into executive session for 25 minutes. At the end of our 25 minutes, we will then adjourn for the day. And we will reconvene tomorrow at 2 o'clock for our 2 o'clock consent agenda. So it is now 10:26. Thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow.